Yeah, man. So this is awesome. I really appreciate you doing this, dude. For the last few days, I've been super hyped about doing this. I'm really excited because some of your sessions are absolutely mind blowing, and I saw them a while ago, but I went back today just to look back over them on Social RV, and you have like some of the absolute freakiest sessions, dude. You and Photon have the freakiest sessions of all time. It's wild.
Yeah, Photon, I consider him a friend now. We've been talking online
Oh,
for long
really?
enough, and he's so scary consistent. That's the thing with him is I don't know if I've ever seen him really get just like a complete miss. Like no, even when he's off a little bit, there's always something in there that's like a hint that he definitely was in contact with the target. So I don't know. He's something else.
Yeah,
But
it's freaky. He's a little bit of a mystery to me. I tried to reach out to him to do a similar thing, but he doesn't. He's I don't know. He seems like a kind of mysterious guy or girl. Who knows?
yeah. And I'm pretty sure guy, but again, yeah, who knows? Um, he's super sincere. I can't say enough about him. I just think he's a great character. But I also think like I expect people to want to kind of guard their privacy a little bit in this space,
Yeah,
you
that's a
know?
that's a big thing, and that's such something with my site is I've got a few people asking like, why can't I hide submissions? Because on my site, on Social RV, you can hide submissions. I intentionally don't allow that. Reason being is because Social RV exists and it's a great platform, and I tell people to go to Social RV if they want that. But I really want to like democratize remote viewing essentially, and I really want it to be a meritocracy where everything's open and the best viewers come to the top. But that's not for everyone. I understand. Some people don't want to participate in that.
I it, I mean, there's merits to that idea. I mean, if and I don't think every community has to be for everyone. Like the social RV does a really good job of that, but it is very research oriented. And I've talked to Chase about this. I like him so much. I
Dude,
just think the world of him.
Chase is the coolest guy of all time. Go on, finish your point though. But I got something on that as
Well,
well.
he's starting to branch off into esoteric targets, and it's gonna move the needle. It's gonna drive traffic. The esoteric targets like, UFOs and what's under the pyramids and all that, like everybody right now that's driving internet conversation around the topic of remote viewing. It's not necessarily the best research topic, though, because you can't get good real world information on your target.
Hmm.
All you can get is kind of the topic at hand. There are formats where you can have multiple viewers try to get to the same target and then compare them, but
Hmm.
there's so many different opportunities for contamination, for feedback contamination between viewers.
Yeah.
So if they ever find out that the other viewers came up with the same information as them, then you have to consider whether or not that is serving to inform their feedback and is influencing their session
Hmm.
rather than information coming from the real world target.
Hmm.
Or could it be 60% one and 40% the other? It's such a messy subject when you get into feedback or targets that you cannot get concrete real world information on. And
Yeah.
so like to me, I'm glad he's doing it. These I'm glad that your site also yours just having wandered around it in kind of a pedestrian manner. I haven't built an account. I haven't I've looked at some of the tools that you have though, and you've done a good job of rolling them out in a very public way. Your new bot that's like a librarian,
It's funny, right? A little alien in the corner. Isn't that funny?
that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
And having having an easy interface where people can type their questions in
Hmm.
and then get a return that comes from this pile of literature and research that now exists for remote viewing.
Hmm.
Like we've needed that for a really long time. Just a library of knowledge. And so like I feel like a lot of the tools that viewers who are serious about it, who've sort of just been doing private sessions for a long time and trying to develop their own skills.
Hmm.
Now it's like we've got the AIs and we've got the ability to get good statistical analysis over a wide range of sessions from a lot of viewers.
Hmm.
And like you say, it's all democratized. And so you're never going to convince anybody, or you're never going to convince everybody, I
Hmm.
should say. But people who are genuinely curious now have every opportunity to really dig in and experience the thing. So,
Yeah, totally. And I want to circle back. I'll address that, but I want to circle back to something that you said at the beginning of that, which is talking about the esoteric targets. And my experience with that when it comes to trying to spread awareness of remote viewing and try to get it a little bit more, accepted by the mainstream, is that there's really two categories of evidence. There's anecdotal evidence, like you have your buddy and you just show him some wild sessions. You have some of my go-tos, like that dirt mound session we'll go over with the circled stacked. That's one of my
yeah.
go-tos to just show people. You can show them like phenomenal anomalous sessions, and then the thing that I really really admire and inspired me with Social RV with Chase's site is the statistics, because there's different people respond to different types of evidence. Some people respond really well to like wild anomalies, and then some people understand, okay, well, it could be just a psychological effect in the law of large numbers where you're going to get, anomalous sessions. But then when you show them the data that Chase has produced, for example, across the entire thing and how everything's appended, not everything, but there's a lot of sessions that are appended to the blockchain, and you can look at the p-value of the blockchain appended sessions, and it's like ridiculously. I think it's right now just the blockchain sessions. I think it's over an order of magnitude better than being statistically significant, which is
Yeah.
he has both of those classes of evidence, and when you get those two things, I think that's when things really start to change. And I bring this up to say that I'm incredibly, incredibly optimistic about the field and about the growth. I really do think, I call it almost jokingly the Psi revolution. I think that this stuff is going to explode in the next 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And from the second thing that you went on about from the technology point of view, I think the thing that really enabled a lot of technology is AI. Not to be an AI evangelist, but like in the last few years, blockchain and AI has allowed tools for remote viewing to be built that would have never been feasible before, especially because it's a small field and there's not a lot of money in it. You can't get a massive research team to build a tool, but now with really good state-of-the-art AI models, you can have just a random bootstrapper build tools that are very very useful. So I'm incredibly optimistic about the technology that's going to be built, the research that's going to be done, and
Hmm.
just where the field's moving in general.
Yeah. Like just think about how like something simple like handwriting. Like it wasn't that long ago. It was a couple years ago that if you had sessions that involved handwriting, you
Hmm.
would have to have a human being combing over them
Yeah.
and breaking them down into data points and trying to assign, what the base layer for, a random chance session would be versus whatever he's looking at.
Hmm.
And now you can just give it to an AI and the AI will look at the handwriting and be nearly 100% accurate with it. Like just a very like something as fundamental as that completely changes the whole landscape of what you can do as an individual
Hmm.
without having a team,
Hmm.
and with having limited time. Everybody I know who's working on this is working on it in their spare time. We all have, jobs or responsibilities, and there's no real money in the research aspect of remote viewing right now.
Hmm.
And so you have volunteers, and AI just expands the potential of a volunteer who has a good idea.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and and we're seeing that now. We're seeing that potential kind of flourish. And guys like you, guys like Chase, you're kind of like the the technomancers in this field,
Hmm.
right? Like I was joking with Chase the other day that like when I look at everything he's talking about with social RV, it's almost like describing a wizard's house. Like you've got one room where the prediction markets are going to be, and you've got another room where we churn out the maths and try to figure out like optimize the individual performance.
Hmm.
And then you have like this library of accumulated knowledge, and it's just like, I don't know, it's the thing that is being built right now is so strange. And it wouldn't it wouldn't be compelling if it didn't work. That's the weird thing about it, is it's like bringing people into this conversation, people from work or people from family. You show them the thing that we're building, and it's like, oh, that's a weird, spooky place. And then you show them the examples, and you can see the moment when they realize what they're looking at. And it's almost like their that worldview shift.
Yeah, it's shocking.
That's, yeah, it is. There's a shock moment involved when you're like, wait, people do this?
Hmm.
I've been around for decades and I never even considered this as something people could do. And now there's a whole community of people who are doing it. That's the point that we're at right now. And I'm really interested to see how, like, the social conversation around it develops and what sort of both positive and oddly negative influences in that conversation continue to bubble up and the motivations behind those. I just think that I don't know, we're getting a lot of interesting little moments in time right now.
Yeah,
So,
it is a phenomenally interesting moment in time, and things are developing so fast. The rate of progress, the rate of new developments is happening so much, and even beyond like us, you brought up from a social point of view what the implications are going to be, which I'm very interested in. The other thing is like I think about this a lot, and it's something that I really struggle with is, if this stuff works and you're able to operationalize it, to what extent does that affect pretty much everything? Right?
yeah,
Like,
markets get changed overnight.
yeah,
Like
I mean,
the
Marcus.
amount of investment that like hedge funds
Mhm.
would put into something that gives them a 0.1% advantage over their competitors.
Mhm.
And we're talking about being able to see a binary outcome with a 60% effective rate.
Mhm.
Like that's a sea change in trading. And that claim sounds outrageous. If you talk to anybody in that whole field, that
Yeah.
claim sounds outrageous. And
Mhm.
there are people who do it. Like,
I think it would kill speculation when it comes to finance and investment.
oh
I
yeah,
don't think it would. I mean, obviously, people would still be able to invest, but there's a large. I mean, I'm not like insanely educated on this, but it's my understanding that like a lot of that has to do with financial markets is speculation. That entire base of speculation, once this becomes mainstream and a lot of people start using these tools, there's going to be a competitive advantage for a while about people using ARV and basically getting ahead of the speculation and being able to predict things correctly. But then once
yeah,
everyone else starts jumping on that ship, the competitive disadvantage disappears because everyone kind of knows what's going to happen. And it really just becomes, investing becomes a mathematical algorithm and with zero speculation. Like you invest in different things and you know what the return is going to be. It's just really going to shift everything from that
yeah,
perspective, is how I think it's going to
yeah.
go.
You were talking about the Psi revolution
Mm,
earlier. Um, there was I can't remember who did it. It might have been MIT or somebody like that, UC Berkeley, somebody like that. They put out it was an example of an AI being able to read brainwaves during a visualization exercise and reconstructing
mm.
the visualized image with a 90% accuracy in the first generation of the tech.
I saw that.
Just let your mind reel with the possibilities. Think about like an AI that can watch a viewer during a session and isolate the moment where they hit on the image itself and then look at the brainwaves
Hmm.
and then program that over time to average it out so that a viewer can in session be notified whenever they are on target and whenever they're in the optimal psychic state. So that instead of wondering whether or not they need to dig into this piece of information, this sensory impression that they're getting,
Hmm.
they can know for certain that they're on target and then they can just explore. Because right now it's like you you get all of these sensory impressions and you write them all down and you get pretty good at feeling the difference between remote viewing data and your imagination. Over time, there's a pretty stark difference between the two. Imagination being clear and nameable, and the remote viewing information being very murky and surprising.
Hmm.
Remote viewing information is surprising. That's probably the best word that I would use for it.
Hmm.
It's like with imagination, you look at it and you're like, I know what that is. Whereas with remote viewing data, you get the impression. And my first reaction is usually like, where did that come from? Like that's the surprising impulse that comes along with that signal. And I can recognize it now, but how useful would it be to have like a tone or something that would play that would tell you that you are now performing in the optimal psychic state? And we know this
Yeah,
because,
and
yeah.
even beyond that, that sort of technology could just be used not even just to give the viewer feedback, but to be able to basically predict what is analytical overlay, and what is your brain coming up with, and what's the actual psychic signal. And that's the beautiful thing about machine learning. And as you could apply it to this, you could have a remote, you could basically train a machine learning algorithm where you have a remote viewer, you hook them up to an EEG and whatever else, brain scans. You have them do remote viewing sessions, and then you give it feedback based off of, you look at the viewing session, you see what data they produced, and then you
Hmm.
see specific pieces of the data of the session that were really good, and then you can use the software to backtrack in time and look at, okay, what was the brain state specifically used, what parts of the brain lit up when specifically that piece of information was gotten. And then you can use that as a feedback mechanism to train the AI to look for what sort of brain state is conducive with positive, good hits. There's so many potential technologies with this stuff.
Think about like AI monitor. Um, right now, all of my sessions are pretty much solo sessions.
Hmm.
That's not the best way to do this. Best way to do this is to have somebody else prompting you with questions. And so, like, if you are in a position where you are training with some sort of a machine learning algorithm and
Hmm.
it's getting better and better at not only recognizing when you're in the optimal state, but recognizing the best questions it could ask regarding the target at
Hmm.
hand just based on past sessions
It
and
knows how to probe
patterns. And
you.
it knows how to, yeah, it knows how to wander through the experience you're having and direct you, which is what a good monitor is supposed to do. A good monitor is supposed to keep the remote viewer on the rails
Hmm.
and direct them when it seems like they're starting to generate really good information so that they don't wander away from good stuff too often. That's my problem. My problem is I'll get a great scan and I won't recognize it as a great scan.
Hmm.
I'll move on to the next one, which is of lower quality, and then I'll just continue wandering through, and then my session will be done, and I'll look at my feedback and I'll be like, why? Why didn't I dig into that one scan more? And I just can't, right now at least, I can't feel the difference between a great scan and one that just has, limited,
Hmm.
still on target information, but there's the difference in quality can be really, you know,
Yeah, well,
valuable if
the
you know when to dig in.
yeah, and the technology to build something like that, even with like a brainwave scan integration that machine learns to know when basically what the brain states are conducive to hits, all the technology to build that exists. At this point, it's just an engineering problem, which to me is my favorite class of problem, where it can work, and it's just who's gonna put in the time to build it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it's such an inspiring position to be in, where you know what the problem is, you know a potential solution, you know the solution is possible, and you just got to say, well, lace up your shoes and go do it, essentially.
Yep. And it's kind of a leap of faith because of the topic at hand.
Hmm.
Like, how do you, if you have a lucrative position already, how do you dedicate a lot of your time to this? Like, that's a leap of faith, but it's a leap of faith that has such a huge reward opportunity. Like, yeah, it's a risk, but the reward opportunity in this is that you are participating in the next generation of this tech.
Hmm.
Like, we don't get very many opportunities as a culture to be on the cutting edge. Not anymore. And this is one of those opportunities. And people who have the vision to recognize that,
Hmm.
I feel like they're going to be in a position to sort of build the landscape from here on out.
Yeah, you're right. It is extremely high risk, extremely high reward, and there's so many potential directions with this technology you can go. And I'll give you an example on that topic. So something that I've built and that I'm actively experimenting with is trying to train an open weight AI model to do the remote viewing itself. So I experimented with AI doing remote viewing in the past, and I just used state of the art models, and I didn't get great results. I didn't get anything significantly beyond chance over a large data set. But an idea that I have now, as I'm building these better and better AI judging systems, that completely automates the process. So I haven't built this yet, but what I plan to do and what I can do is you have, an AI do a remote viewing session. It automates the tasking from the target pool. It does the remote viewing session. You pass the impressions over to the feedback or the judge. The judge does the session and gives it feedback. And there's softwares that you can use to basically look back retroactively at the AI's neural network while it was doing that remote viewing session. And if it did a really good session that scored well, it says, hey, whatever like neural pathways were associated that you used to make that really good session, juice them up. Or if it was a bad session, it looks back retroactively. What are the neural pathways used to produce that bad session, and dampen them a little bit? And it's a self-training thing that's fully automated. But I bring this up because this is an example of something that is extremely high risk. Outside of remote viewing, this is complete nonsense. And even in remote viewing, most people say that this could never work. But the potential reward, if you can get an AI to remote view and you can automate it, you could run 10,000 remote viewing sessions overnight and have an extremely high resolution of data because it's a large data set, and just basically have perfect operationalize ARV perfectly. That's how you say
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, think of it right now. I could do one, like if I was looking at a market and trying to determine a binary outcome, I can do one a day. If you have an AI that could do that, I mean, the sky's the limit as far as how many potential trades you could execute at a very high success rate. The success rate and the hit rate, I feel like is where scientific understanding moves forward in all of this, because there has to be a reason why we get misses. I can't tell the difference between a miss and a hit when I'm in session. And
Really?
I've been doing this for like 4 years, and I've had probably upwards 600 sessions, and probably floating around 60% hit rate. The misses then compile. You get a lot of misses when you're doing this. That's part of the game. So from a science perspective, why? Why do we get misses? Is there I mean, you can't help but kind of build theories around it because it's part of your experience. And right now, the best I can come up with for a theory is, does the timeline change? Like, are you participating in a specific timeline and you have a session, and then you check your feedback and you're still in the same timeline that you were in when you began, therefore your feedback reflects your session. But then you have a session and then you have a complete miss on the other end of it. Does that mean that between the time you did your session and the time you checked your feedback, the timeline changed? And so what you would have been targeting is no longer your target because the randomness involved in it has now chosen a different path. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I don't have
fascinating.
any idea. But like, to me, there are so many opportunities for pure research in remote viewing, and that is one of them. Why do we have misses? Why does this not work 100% of the time? That I think is a really important question that I hope somebody digs into. Um, and I
Well,
wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of a probabilistic reality, like a branch reality, that we might gain some insights into as a result of exploring that question.
yeah, I mean, it really boils down to understanding the mechanism of action because that question becomes a lot easier to know if you know how remote viewing works in the first place. And
Yeah.
it's such a difficult thing to figure out. And honestly, so my opinion on this whole thing and where we're moving is that I mean, that's the main reason that remote viewing isn't accepted because there is great statistical data, but there's no known mechanism of action, and it kind of doesn't fit within our current understanding of physics. Step one is basically do what Chase is doing and what I'm trying to do. Go ahead.
Well, you said that it doesn't really fit within our current understanding of physics. I don't know that that's entirely true because we have all of this, we've got bodies of data now suggesting that the physical models of time work just as well in reverse as they do moving forward. And so the our physical experience is what creates the illusion of time. The
Mm,
fact that we grow old, the fact that we plant a seed and we watch plants grow. Like we watch time moving in one direction.
mhm.
But physically, the math, it works both ways. And so I once you start to sort of compartmentalize the conversation into physical and non-physical, like yes, your physical world can't get beyond the perception of time as moving in one direction, but if there is a version of your consciousness or your consciousness in general that exists outside of the physical world and doesn't experience time in the same way,
Mhm.
or doesn't experience time at all, time doesn't exist, and your consciousness is aware of that and functions just fine
Mhm.
outside of time, then it could be that the mechanism of action, I like that term, um, is the same thing as classical memory.
Mm.
Classical memory, you set your intention to remember your 10th birthday, okay? And you get all of these sensory impressions from that day and all of the memories associated with it. And you can draw a clear picture, a clear and accurate picture because you already have the information.
Mhm.
The event has already taken place. But with remote viewing, you're doing almost the exact same thing, just in reverse. So you are setting your intention to recall the sensory impressions from an event you have not experienced yet.
Mhm.
And so you can still pull sensory impressions the same way you do from a past memory,
Mhm.
but you're pulling sensory impressions from an event you haven't experienced yet. So you don't have the information. And if you don't have the information, it sets that left brain on a bit of a warpath. The left brain wants to fill in the blanks and it wants to guess. It wants to behave the same way that it behaves with classical memory because we're so used to doing that. But because we haven't experienced it yet, we don't actually have all of the data related to that experience, we get analytical overlay. And your left brain just does its best to try and make sense of the impressions you're getting. So in a model like that,
Mhm.
consciousness works both forward and backward in time. And remote viewing is instead of remembering, my youngest kid came up with this term and I absolutely love it. You're pre-membering. You're
Mm.
it's the same mechanism, but you are just using it in the opposite direction. And to our classical understanding of time, that doesn't make sense. But if our consciousness exists outside of time, it could be very easy for it.
Yeah, that's a super fascinating idea. I don't know if I've ever, heard it like that before, and it's very interesting. My problem, not necessarily a problem, but something that I struggle with, with this is trying to understand how does a causality paradox materialize in our world, right?
I have an example of a causality
Oh, let's go.
paradox.
Yeah,
Go,
shoot, this is awesome.
Stephen A. Schwartz. There's a video of an interview that he did with Jeffrey Mishlove,
Hmm.
and I think it has something to do with remote viewing and criminal justice, something like that. And it's on New Thinking Aloud. Anybody watching this who hasn't dug into New Thinking Aloud with Jeffrey Mishlove, spend time there. There is so much good material on remote viewing, so many pioneers in it giving really in-depth interviews where they pretty much spill the beans. Stephen A. Schwartz, he had a team of remote viewers that they were trying to reconstruct the timeline of a murder. And they had some very limited details on it, but they ended up, all of them in their sessions, they described this girl being put in the trunk of a car and having head trauma. And many of them described the suspect stopping at a White Castle and eating 3 cheeseburgers while the girl was still in the trunk of the car. And the detective who was reconstructing the timeline, who was in charge of the investigation, he didn't have that information about the White Castle, and he was going to lose this case.
Mm.
And so this man, on faith, think about that, on faith, went into an interview with the suspect and said, "Listen, I know you killed this girl, and I know that you put her in the trunk of your car and you drove her out here and buried her. Here's what I can't understand. I don't understand how a person in your position with a body in the trunk stops at a White Castle and eats 3 cheeseburgers. How
Wow.
do you do that?" And the defense attorney at that point instructed their client to plead guilty because he believed that they had a surprise
Wow.
witness.
Wow.
Okay. Now, think about where did that information come from? Because the viewers only knew that that event actually took place because the detective gave them that feedback whenever they reviewed it.
Mm.
Okay? But the detective only knew to ask the question because the remote viewers had given him that data in their
Oh.
sessions. So where did it come from? That's a causality loop. That's an example of a real life causality loop. And there are so many, these bubble up in this space. That's just the best example that I can think of right now. I'll try and find that interview and send it to you because, again, pure research opportunities, these things happen in remote viewing, and it could be that ability of consciousness to communicate outside of time creates moments where data comes out of nowhere. And that's one of those cases.
I'm just I would need to sit down for a while and just think about what that means and what can you do with that.
Yeah.
That's something that you can't skip over. You need to literally sit down and stare at a wall for an hour and try to
Yep.
wrap your brain around that. Real so that's I want to I'm going to rewatch this thing multiple times and try to wrap my brain around that, and I'm going to watch that interview because that might be the answer to what I've been trying to figure out. I've been struggling with this so much, trying to figure out how to wrap my head around causality paradoxes because, in my opinion, that's the biggest technical issue to this stuff being real that I could at least come up with myself. And overcoming that to me has been a big personal issue. So that's you offering that solution. That's very
Well,
valuable, and I'm gonna rewatch that.
there are so many like models as to why remote viewing works. And I feel like they kind of fall into two very big categories. And it's like the precognition on demand model versus the clairvoyance model. So the precognition on demand model suggests that feedback is necessary, which I tend to default to that because that's where all of this started.
Mm.
If I'm pressed to make a decision on what to believe in remote viewing, I'm probably going to default to whatever Russell Targ thinks because I don't think anybody knows as much as him in this whole arena, and he studied it for 30 years.
Mm.
Like he continues to study it longer than that now. But his necessity of feedback, the fact that there are only two protocols, you have to be blind and you have to be able to get feedback, that suggests that the precognition on demand model might be the underlying mechanism by which this whole thing works. And so if you have to have feedback, then your reaction to that feedback is what influences your sensory impressions during your session, which also would explain why displacement happens. Displacement is this effect where you generate information in your session that doesn't necessarily connect with your target, but
Mm-hmm.
it connects with something that you experience that's very much like your target around the same time frame that you look at your target. So, like a great example, I've got a session on social RV where I'm looking at the inside of a cathedral,
Mm-hmm.
and I am generating all of this religious iconography. I talk about this a religious figure with something on their head, but the figure in the picture is Jesus on the cross on the wall, and he's got a crown of thorns on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these people that are wandering around these burnout remains of this cathedral. But I drew this like Shiva-like character, this blue-skinned, very Hindu character with a jewel on their head. And I'm like, oh, well, I was close, but I missed it. I went in the other room, and my wife is watching Moulin Rouge, and it's the end of Moulin Rouge, right as Nicole Kidman's character dies. Spoiler, sorry. And there's this guy there's a shot of him, and he takes a crown off his head, and he's
Wow.
all blue, and he's got a jewel right there. And so, like, the data overlap with my target was there, but the experience that I had was displacement around that moment that I saw. And if you go to, I did a project for a little while called r/RV the news. If you follow the timeline of that sub, there are examples of displacement popping up in that sub also, and you
Mm.
can you can sort of follow the chronology of it. And there's not that many sessions on there. There's like 60 something sessions on there, I think. So,
Yeah, that's funny. I've heard, people talk a lot about displacement when it comes to remote viewing, and people say that's why it's not good. Some people think it's not good to remote view lots of sessions in a small time frame because you view the targets of other sessions. I don't know if I've ever heard of, people experiencing displacement for something that's not the remote viewing target. Like you walked into the other room and you experienced that as displacement. And on the topic of this, to my knowledge, no one has really solved well, at least not publicly, the problem of displacement when it comes to operational remote viewing, and that's something that I'm very interested in. And
I
go ahead.
I can tell you what solved it with remote viewing the news.
Okay, yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
I created a mental flare. My theory was that the subconscious it's just like analytical information. You know how the subconscious isn't very good at getting numbers
Hmm.
and letters and things that you have to read. It's very, very good at feeling,
Hmm.
but it's not good at the stuff that the left brain is responsible for.
Yeah.
You're giving the subconscious a very analytical task by asking it to look only at one thing.
Mm.
And so, like, only looking at a specific picture on a specific news site at a specific date and time, which is what we did on RV the News.
Mm.
That's a very analytical task. And so, my theory was the subconscious casts a wide net and looks for something that is like what it is that you are targeting. And sometimes it gets it exactly right, and sometimes it's off by 10 minutes, a half an hour, something like that. And you're looking at something else, and that's what the subconscious grabs onto. So what I did was I created I thought that I would send up a flare for the subconscious so that it would know where to look.
Wow.
I would create a specific behavior that I only did. Never in any other area of life do I do this.
Hmm.
I only did this one behavior right before I checked my feedback, which is I would go and I would stare into a mirror and I would say the words, "Okay, this is the target picture you were trying to see. Are
Wow.
you ready?" And then I would look at my picture. And because I didn't do that any other time, I'm pretty sure that resolved that issue for the subconscious because displacement kind of discontinued on RV the News after that.
It's like you're putting up a mental landmark
Yes.
to know where to look in the future.
Yes.
From a procedural point of view, I've never well actually I've heard of people doing that for something different that I don't need to necessarily get into, but for remote viewing that's very interesting. My whole idea, so I'm not going to get into too much technical detail, but I've been working on and testing, and I'm soon going to release on my site a completely new type of AI judge, that, without getting too much into detail, it uses a certain system of vector embeddings, which, long story short, is much more algorithmic. Like the current way that my and Social RV's AI judge works is it's literally a large language model that looks at the decoys, looks at the target. It has vision too. It can look at it, looks at the impression, and then it ranks them in similarity. I built something that is based off of vector embeddings, and it's much more efficient because it's a mathematical algorithm. So it's not an AI doing most of the work, and obviously computers are very good at doing computations and algorithms. And my point in bringing that up is what I'm hoping that this is going to do is it's going to allow me to basically try to mathematically deduce any displacement effect, because in order to do that you need to not only be able to judge the target that's associated with the impression, you need to be able to judge each impression off of the 5 targets before and after it, right? And then, or I guess not before, but after it. So it's just
Hmm.
increasing the amount of computation that you need to do, which with the traditional AI judging system it's not feasible because it takes a long time and it's expensive with API credits with these AIs. But if I can get this working really well, this algorithmic judge, I'm hoping that I can try to basically mathematically deduce if there's any displacement effect.
Sure. Um, I wanted to bring up the mental flare,
Hmm.
that whole idea. Um, the reason that I think it works is similar to the reason why the cool down process works during the session. Um, Remote viewers all talk about their cool down process. All of them have this sort of ritual that they go through in order to try and gain access to the quiet mind. And people have been doing that for a really long time, whether it's Tritaka meditation, candle gazing, the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali talked about being able to see the unseen,
Hmm.
having some supernatural abilities pop up in the perfect mind, which he called Siddhis, Siddhis, which means perfections.
Hmm.
And all of this was a result of them having a ritual that they would go through that they didn't do any other time. They only did it when they wanted to get into that specific mental state.
Mm.
I think there's something about that behavior that you dedicate a behavior to trying to communicate with the subconscious where it works. The subconscious is available for that, but you have to let it know this is your time. I'm
Mm.
opening up a window right now for the subconscious to speak into my conscious awareness. And then using that same tool,
Hmm.
you can tell the subconscious, this is what I want you to look at in the future when you're about to check your feedback. I just wanted to make that clear. I do think that that mental flare is just using the same tool that other viewers are already using at the beginning of their sessions, which is just a short, personal, individually crafted ritual
Hmm.
that you don't do anywhere else in your life. So, sorry.
Right. Well, I
I,
think I think that's super smart to apply to remote viewing because people, when people do other activities or competitive things, whatever it may be, that's a thing that like professional athletes do, for example.
yeah,
Which I mean, it's just a psychological trick where if you have the same ritual that you only do before a specific action, over time your brain associates that the ritual with that specific action, and therefore doing the ritual in the future is going to tell your brain, okay, it's time to perform this action. Which
yeah.
I don't see that's a great point. I don't see why you couldn't apply that to remote viewing, and I could see how that could help solve the displacement issue.
That was a game changer for me
Mm,
individually. And I know Photon does something that's similar to that.
mm,
And he's so zen. I don't know how else to put it. Just talking to him, he's he's just he reminds me a lot of the videos that you see of McMonagall when McMonagall talks,
mm.
which is just that it's almost like the words that are coming out of him are flowing directly from inspiration. And
Wow.
Photon is a lot like that. He's he's an interesting character.
It's funny you say that. So the guy who I consider to be my spiritual mentor, a guy I know in real life, he is he's one of, if not the best remote viewers that I've ever met. And he's a serial meditator. He spent he does it less now, but he went through long periods of his life where he would meditate for 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and he's very experienced and exploring these areas that you go to when you meditate. And he's the exact same way. He is the most chill guy. It's impossible to make him angry. It's impossible to even like almost make him have a bad thought or to be upset about something. And I don't know, something about that mindset is very conducive to remote viewing, because I had him do like a remote viewing session, and it was the most nutty thing I've ever seen in the world. It's like it was just he was so good at it. I wish I could get him to do it more, but he's so busy and he doesn't really care. He's not really into it. But
Well,
something about that.
these meditators, the the supernatural abilities that pop out of it are almost a distraction for them.
Mhm.
They're like, "Ah, I don't want to become attached to that."
Yeah.
It's like how can you just move past this thing that you just participated in? And they're like, well, I
It's
don't
almost
really want
paradoxical. The people that
to.
could
It is.
that could do the most and could prove it to people the most, they almost like lose that
They're
want in the
already beyond
process.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So real quick though, I want to
Yeah,
go
let's go over
through.
some sessions.
Yeah, yeah. So let me get this set up. And also I think I'm gonna edit this to the front of the video because I want to do it real quick and go through these because I want people to have the context of who you are. I think that's important so that people
Sure.
see the crazy sessions and then they can listen to your perspectives and they
Hey,
have a
you,
level of appreciation for it.
I trust you. You edit this however you feel like it.
So real quick, I'm gonna screen share. And we're gonna do this. So I want to make sure you can see this, and I want to make sure that that my OBS can still see
You're gonna
this.
have to pardon my cats here.
Oh,
They're
you're
coming
good.
out of hiding, so
You're
I apologize.
you're good, man. Okay, so real quick, can you see Social RV?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Because I think on my OBS we can see it as well. So there's two of your I don't we could go through so many of them, but there's two of your sessions that are absolutely nuts on Social RV that I want to go through. You probably know which ones I'm talking about. This first one that I want to go through with you real quick, I just want to go through your impressions. We'll show the target, and then I want to
Sure.
get an overview of your methodology and kind of what you experienced creating this. So if we go through this one and I make this full screen, right? Feels like curly brown texture on top of something, also feelings of round shapes stacked on top of one another, getting smaller in diameter as they go higher on the stack. Feels like I'm outdoors, right? And then you have a couple other ones that we can go through. Uh-oh, I got a message, Chase. Might be a bug. Or it might be on my end.
These, if you refresh the page, these things happen
Is that what
sometimes
it
on
is?
this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha, that might help. Perfect, okay.
they.
Two cylindrical shapes sticking up from a round shape. Still feels it has depth. It's deeper and thinner in the middle than it is on the outside. And you get this, these two things sticking up in this conical shape. And then we'll go to the last one, which is kind of similar to the front. You almost have this like birthday cake looking thing. Some structures or whatever it is on the side. Long view, wide open space. People can read this. It's a very similar description.
Sure.
And then you go down to the target, and you reveal target. That is one of the craziest things. And I'll tell you why this is so crazy. So I'll give you an example. Someone did a session on my site and they won like $100 in a bounty where it was like this grass on the left and then there was like a cliff on the right that falls off into water and it's this like weird looking castle thing in the center. And the guy describes it perfectly. He gets the land-water interface, he gets the grass, he gets the structure. He even gets the fact that there are arched doorways and that the top, the roof of the castle is flat. That to me is insanely impressive, but that's not on the same level of this, in my opinion. Reason being is that is a much more, it's a common structural archetype, right? The thing that's so impressive about this session to me is the fact that nothing is shaped like this. There are no there are no birthday cake shaped structures. This image is the first one I've ever seen in my life. Like even a pyramid is different because it's not circular and it doesn't have that step thing. The fact that this target circular, it's a large structure and it has these, steps going up and this impression. I mean this drawing right here. Come on. So it's absolutely wild to me. What I want to ask you is, I guess just, we already talked about this a little bit, but give me kind of an overview of your methodology. And do you remember conducting this session? Did anything,
Yeah.
Just walk me through all of that.
So this session was done in my car at work. On my lunch breaks, I go into my car and I put on my Bluetooth headphones and I have been lately playing the Focus 15 tones from the Expand app. I haven't spent a ton of time in Gateway, but the binaural tones, I think there's probably something there. And I know that HemiSync was used heavily during Stargate, so I use that sometimes. I did that in this case. This was the. There are times whenever I have a session where I'll have an intuitive flash, and they don't typically happen because I'm not the most visual of viewers. I deal with a lot of feelings. I'm not like a visual artist. If you look at somebody else's sessions like Photons, he's an accomplished artist. And I'm good with colors. I'm very consistent with colors. I'm very consistent with background and foreground shapes and textures. But as far as really getting a snapshot of the target, I don't typically get that. In this case, I did, and it happened almost immediately. I when I set my intention to view the information associated with the target ID and I wrote it down and let my hand scribble, what I do is I take my left hand and I press it onto a point in that line where it feels like my hand wants to stop. That is a subconscious expression, that line is. And so the hope is that the subconscious will be able to communicate through some sort of an anchor. And in this case, I put my hand down and pretty much right away I got an intuitive flash that was that birthday cake shape. And I was able to get rid of the birthday cake imagery and just describe it using basic language, and it worked.
Is that
The
is,
birthday cake being the analytical overlay.
is that is that
And
AOL that you got in live while you're
yes.
doing it? Yeah, 'cause it
And then
looks, yeah.
later on, I said that it looked like an Olympian, I don't remember. I think it's on the third scan on here exactly what I said, but something like platform
This one?
athletes on Olympian podiums.
Oh, that's what these structures you were drawing. Oh, I
No, the
see
one
that.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it felt like there was the birthday cake imagery and then the Olympic podium imagery and all that. So that's the AOL. That's the left brain trying to guess what it is that your target will be based on the sensory information you're receiving. You got to get rid of that. And so you declare it and you try and let it escape your awareness so that you don't let your entire session get colored by that analytical overlay.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath that analytical overlay, underneath that mental image, there is information that is driving your left brain to create what you're seeing. And if you can describe what you're seeing using foundational basic language, oftentimes that description is going to be close to the information that is coming from your target. And the more times you do that, the more higher resolution interaction you get with your target in the circle that's called opening the aperture to the target. So in this case, it happened almost immediately. That doesn't always happen with me. Most of the time, I have to dig at my target for a little while before I start getting really good information.
And let me ask you something. So, I've only done one of these interviews before. I interviewed a guy named Nick Bro, username Higher Minded. He's got the lowest p-value on my site right now. It's like a 2% p-value. And I interviewed him, and he's got he does the same thing with the numbers, and then it kind of the last number goes off into scribbles. Where did you learn that? Is that from a specific protocol?
So there are forms of controlled remote viewing, which started off as coordinate remote viewing, where you try to capture an ideogram.
Mm-hmm.
My issue with the ideogram is that I can't help but try and guess
Mm.
because ideograms follow a specific structure.
Mm.
You'll have a circle for life form, you'll have a right angle for a man-made structure, you'll have a wave for water, you'll have a lightning bolt for energy. There's a whole library of ideograms, and a lot of remote viewers use them successfully.
Mm-hmm.
I tried for a long time, and my issue was it always felt forced. It always felt like a conscious decision as opposed to a subconscious decision. And so oftentimes I will find classical ideogram shapes. For instance, in the one that you're looking at here,
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice that it drops straight down and then goes into a right angle before the scribble continues
Yep.
on. That's a classic ideogram shape for a man-made structure.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
you will find classic, and if you look in the center between the first scribble and the second
Yeah,
scribble,
here.
that downward and then open space,
Mm-hmm.
that's a typical ideogram shape that signifies open space.
Mm.
And so like you can go in but I also wonder how much of that is me just seeing patterns that maybe don't even that would be a really difficult thing to research whether or not those ideogram shapes that I'm seeing in that squiggle line are actual classical ideograms or if I'm just seeing it afterwards having the benefit of knowledge.
Is that a known thing, like these patterns with the scribbles, or is that something
Yeah.
that you recognized yourself over time, or is this like known in CRV?
What's funny is it's a conclusion that viewers come to on their own.
Oh, really?
The number of people I've talked to online that are like, "Oh, you do that too." Like, it's sort of,
You get that? Yeah.
yeah, people feel their way to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
People come to, so it's not even something that's necessarily taught you, just from personal experience, having spoken to other viewers.
What's taught is, what's her name? She goes by Birdie now. Prudence Calabrese is her name. She gave a class years ago, and she talked about a transit line, is what she called it. And before she does her sessions, she scribbles and scribbles and scribbles and scribbles. And then she writes her target ID, and then she tries to capture an ideogram. So in her version, the scribbling helps her to become less attached to a conscious decision. And so it allows the ideogram to be more natural and subconscious. I was never able to get that right. And so I just stuck with the scribble. And really, it could be that is just one more aspect of the ritual that I go through prior to making contact with the target that signals the subconscious that I'm ready to communicate. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the main function that scribble line serves, but I don't know. I'm not.
If it works,
I don't want
if it
to.
works, it works.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I'm not an expert on my own routine, but nobody knows how this works. All we know is that it produces results, and this session's a good example of that.
That's the number one thing that matters. I want to go on to another one, the Titanic one. You know which one I'm talking about?
Sure. Yeah.
Let me get to that real quick. I gotta click community score. I can click both of them. I don't remember which one it was. Oh yeah, here it is.
That's
Okay,
it
this
right
is
there.
it. So let's go through these real quick. This is your first one. Two large light colored vertical shapes rounding on top, spiritual feelings, light tan, yellow color. AOL, you got stained glass windows, and you draw these almost like, this certain shape. And then we go to the next scan. Large dark colored area standing out, has a dramatic angle on top, feels like it serves to remember something important. And then you get feelings of mortality and honor, which is a very unique descriptor that stuck out to me when I first saw this. And then the final one, you have the same thing, something about a ship, big ship with lots of people on board. And you have AOL Titanic. And I guess you got to that from not only from this descriptor, but from the previous one being something that felt like mortality. And then if we go and we reveal the target right here, it's the Titanic. It's an underwater shot of the sunken Titanic. You literally named the target. This is the definition of a Targ 7. And what's really interesting to me is it's completely different from the other one because, your first impression was kind of off, like just the pure information you were getting. It's the analytical overlay that you got to that was perfectly spot on. And with the other one, you were having the opposite issue. So same thing, if you want to give me some information about, this session while you were doing it, etc., I'd love to hear.
So this is the reason why you always declare your analytical overlay. Always declare your analytical overlay and write it down on the paper, even if it's an idea you're trying to get rid of because you don't want it to color your session. Analytical overlay is driven by your imagination guessing at what the underlying sensory information means, and almost always it guesses incorrectly, and sometimes it guesses correctly. And in this case, that's what happened. And so, at the very beginning of this session, the light coming through, light is very unique. Specifically, anything that carries the spiritual feelings. Pay attention to that. There's a phenomenon in remote viewing called numinosity, which is, you know about this already.
Yeah.
It's a target that has a history of emotional commitment behind it, will shine differently in the remote viewing environment than a target that is plain. A good example is like if you're looking at a warehouse that's specific dimensions and you're looking at a cathedral that's the same dimensions, they're both very similar. They're large structures with a lot of openness inside. The warehouse will be very boring if you get any information on it at all, and the cathedral will just shine. And I don't know why that is, but it is the case. And with this right here, the stained glass windows, there are stained glass windows that were in the main ballroom of the Titanic. And after this session was complete, I think I wrote about it in my notes here. I remembered once I saw my feedback that on the underwater exploration of the wreckage of the Titanic, that's always what I remember seeing was the light that was going into the structure from outside the stained glass windows. They must have tortured themselves to get that shot because I saw it so many times, this light from the inside coming through the stained glass windows.
Wow.
And so I didn't have any idea it was the Titanic here. And I didn't have any idea it was the Titanic at the end of the session. The second scan, this scan right here, this will happen. It's a very typical interaction. When I saw this point, it was like I was standing there looking up at it. And it was this very large, very gray, dark color that was standing out from this open area. And it was as if I was standing right in front of it. When that happens, that's called aesthetic impact. When you start to feel and describe what it's like to be right in front of the target. Like if you say, oh God, it feels like I'm really small right now, or it feels like there's something above me. That's an indication that you've made really good contact with the target and you want to start talking about everything that it makes you feel. And so like I wrote gravestone, memorial statue under analytical overlay because the feelings I was getting was like, this is important. Somebody's trying to remember something with this. It was like a Vietnam memorial, or it was like some sort of a large gray heavy object that is just pregnant with meaning. And the meaning felt like it was all about mortality. Like I wrote, like people are trying to honor the lost. And so I wrote that, feelings of mortality and honor.
And that's interesting. It seems like this almost correlates with the first scan you did with the light and how you were telling me, what the light typically correlates with, and then you tell me this thing. You're almost describing a sort of separate thing, but you get you in both of these sessions and in both of these scans, you get that impression of meaningfulness. You're just kind of
You're
experiencing
opening
it in
the,
different
yep,
ways.
you're opening the aperture. With each scan, you're getting just a little more and more and more data comes in with each scan. And so in this case, the more I look at it, if you look at the picture of the Titanic, the peak of it, imagine if you're sitting where your mouse originally was, right at the tip.
Yeah,
If you're down there looking up, I'm pretty sure that's where I was.
really.
And so like imagine that angle being underneath it looking up at it. I
Yep.
think I think that's what I drew and I think that's what I'm trying to describe. Um and yeah, I can't say that for certain, but I'm pretty sure I was looking up at it right there.
No, it's a reasonable guess, especially in the context of the other things. Do you have the ability ever, when you're doing remote viewing, can you consciously look at it from different angles and move around and try to gather? Really? Tell me about that.
So I have a workbook slash manual that I give out for free. And there's a lot of examples on there about what you can do. You're free when you're at your target once you've made contact. You can ask whatever questions you want, you can move around it. Typically, whenever I move around a target, I will write it on the page. I will say view from the top, and you command your subconscious to move wherever you want it. Like I will say out loud and write on the page view from the top, and then I will wait and whatever sensory impressions bubble up in the quiet mind, I will assume are a reaction to my last command. And so whatever I capture will be data from the perspective of the top. In the manual, I'm talking about a submarine. And the view from the top was a submarine surfacing, and it had all these ripples in water that were evening out from a central point. And so, like, you can move around your target, but understand that it is a conscious decision and you need to remember that you did it, which is why I write it down on the paper so that the data that you collect is seen through the lens of where it was that you thought you were at your target.
Yeah, it makes it more easy to make the data coherent when you know what data you got and from what angle and position you were looking at it from. That
With the
makes a
social
lot of
RV
sense.
sessions, with these social RV sessions, I typically don't do a lot of that. If I'm doing a very long session, like if I'm going to spend a couple hours at a target, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect page after page after page after page of data. I don't want to do that for social RV because of social RV, I'm trying to make the AI's job easy. And so I don't want to give it 20 pages of attempt after attempt after attempt and me wandering around the target and me asking for every sense that I can think of and, digging down into secondary and third level, trying to plumb more information from specific impressions that I get.
Sure.
I'm just going to do like what you're seeing here, where I ask a question and I record the result. But
Yeah,
as a viewer, you have more options. You can do a lot more than what you're seeing here. Once you've made contact with the target, you can be there as long as you want.
Yeah, I think you mentioned trying to please the AI, and that's something that I've been talking to people about. Like that guy Nick Bro, his sessions, even the sessions that he does do, they're like CRV style sessions. They're one page, but they're very information dense. And he told me he's like, I don't wanna. I'm gonna try to make them more simple for the AI, or he was thinking about that or something. And that almost hurts me to hear because my position with the AI is like it's a cool tool to estimate, but at the end of the day, you're doing practice sessions, so the AI's judge doesn't really matter. What matters is how good it is, and people are going to see that. And it's also the community score. If you have a really good session where the AI doesn't get the data, it's like whatever. It's still going to get recognized. The
Yep.
AI is almost like an estimation tool for me, and it's kind of nice just to get like a quick estimate of feedback. But at least at this point, it's not good enough to be the end all be all.
Unfortunately, we can't help ourselves but to project onto it the illusion of authority.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, people will want to please the authority. And so like our behavior will sort of assimilate to what it is we think this
Even if not
judge,
intentionally.
even if not intentionally,
Yeah.
we'll try and assimilate to what the judge wants.
Mm.
And so in this case, the judge is a cold, unfeeling artificial intelligence. And
Yeah.
if it were a panel of
Mhm.
human beings that were going to comb over all of your data with you, you might have more people doing a sort of a more um, classical page after page after page remote viewing session.
Mm.
Which, if you ever get a chance, looking at any of the documentation, Ed May wrote like 700 page, 3 volume collection of everything they did with Stargate.
Mhm.
In there is a lot of the original sessions, and they are like 20, 30 pages people will write.
Mm.
And then it's the monitor's responsibility to try and dig into, which pages were good information and more reliable and all that. The very last picture on here I wanted to go into for a second.
Sure.
Or not, I'm sorry, the same session you were
Oh, the
just
same
on.
session. Okay, okay, I got you.
I
Let me go back.
apologize.
No, you're good. Like the third, this final one. Yes, let's do
There we go.
this.
I'm trying to read text.
Hmm.
That is my new goal in remote viewing, and
What
it
does the
has been for a
text
little
say?
while now, and I'm
What do you mean
having
by
some
read
experience.
text? Read what
So
text?
I've had a few examples
Hmm.
where there is text present in my target image,
Mm.
and I can recognize that there's something here that I can read, and I'm able to pull some information from it. What I realized was that is the case in every single target that I have. Every target that I have on Social RV, there's going to be text because there's a paragraph description beneath it.
Oh.
And so, what I do now is I try to say, what does the text say?
Mm.
And I do the same thing that Pat Price did during his Sugar Hill session. If you're at all familiar with the Sugar Hill controversy that happened with Pat Price, there was these cabinets that were underground, and he said that he pushed his head into the cabinets to see what the documents inside were.
Mm.
And when his head mushed into the documents, words popped into his head.
Mm.
So that's what I try to do. I
Really?
know that there's going to be text right next to my target.
So you were
And
doing the
so
text on this for this last
so
scan.
I told my subconscious I wanted to know what the text said,
Hmm.
and it returned this. I mean, it was like I was looking at the cover of the movie. It was like I watched the Titanic come in to play,
Hmm.
and I said, it's telling me something about a big ship with lots of people on board. I'm seeing the Titanic. So, if there's another, if you go to the that sessions list that you were just looking at,
Yep. Like one of these.
no, no, no. My most recent sessions that I've done on Social RV.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's
There you
look.
go. Look at the second to most recent one.
This one right here.
Yes, it's Elon Musk.
That was the
No,
target.
not. No, 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 no. I got to
This
go
one.
back. I guess it's the third one. I've done another one since then.
Yeah. No worries. This one.
So, this picture,
Yeah.
I didn't get any of it. But
Really.
he's talking about Neuralink.
Uh
The
huh.
text is all about Neuralink. Read that first scan.
Um, intricate interlocking tiny parts that make up a larger whole. Long spiraling lines carrying particles that perform a specific function. Feels like a science target in the result. That's insane.
So, there's nothing in the picture that gives me that
Oh, and
information.
it
I'm
says it
reading
in
the
here?
text.
Oh, it's Neuralink press. Dude, that's crazy. That is
So,
wild.
that's my new goal with
Wow.
remote viewing as a whole is to be able
Wow.
to consistently read text.
And that's so
And
interesting to me because the traditional consensus, at least that I've heard, is that it's pretty much impossible to read text in remote viewing because the resolution is too high.
that is the consensus. It has not been my experience so far.
Wow.
I think but here's the thing. If you are looking for text in your target, in your actual target image,
Hmm.
you have to first recognize that there is something in your target image that you can read.
Mm.
I've got another session on here from August. I can't remember exactly what date it is. If you go
So I'll look
to
for it.
yeah, you go there and then go to community score, click it again.
Oh yeah, I gotta find. You want me to go from top
There we
down?
go.
There we go.
So it's in August. It might be August 31st,
Yeah, here's the 31st. If I go to
December, or
community score.
August 13th. August 13th is what we're
Okay.
looking for.
And it's blockchain verified. This one,
Yes.
it's on the
So look
blockchain
at that.
too, which is extra
Look
awesome.
at that first picture.
Okay, what does the target feel like? It feels like something I can read and something to do with time. Something on display reads out an impression of time. And then it's
And I
22.
wrote 22. Now look at the target.
2022. Oh my gosh.
So
This is so crazy.
you can recognize. So I'm going to tell you what the subconscious gave this to me as. And it took effort to move past the original analytical overlay. Also, the rest of the session, you can go through it. This was a very good session. Look at the next slide.
Yeah, let's go through them. Show me something I'll recognize. Areas of colored light, nebulous looking pink and green diffused light like a nebula would look. Light reflecting through a clear medium. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Look at the next one.
Target feels like it's related to time. Some time or symbol you can read to communicate something about time. Feels techie, well-built feelings of precision and craftsmanship. Black surface, semi-gloss reflective shine to it. Some nebulous pink and green colors that might be reflecting through glass or another clear medium. The tech is made with one round shape that returns clockwise. So this probably isn't in the impression, but if you ever see how these like laser creators
It
work
is-
for festivals,
It is in the impression.
Oh, it
It
is.
is in the picture.
It is in
So
the
the tech is made of a single circle that turns
I wish
clockwise,
I wish I could
located
make it
in
bigger.
located in the center of another circle that doesn't move. So if you look at this session online and zoom in, there's like a scaffolding
Yeah, I wish I
frame.
could zoom in.
It's okay. The other people can look at this
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I'm gonna link all
There's
your
like a
sessions.
there's like a frame,
Yeah.
like a like some sort of a frame that people walk through.
Yeah.
That's just a structure and it's circular. And this laser is on the inside of that circle.
You
So
can
what
kinda
I'm
see it.
describing is a circle on the inside that can move
Yep.
inside of a circle that can't move. And so even though it's not, I might not be describing the circle itself, I'm describing this thing that I'm seeing. And then the next slide also.
Yeah, let's see the fact that there are 4 of these and they're all so perfect. Semi-gloss black surface has a muted shine to it. Old piano paint surface feels techie. Feels like an impressive feat of engineering. Feels precision and craftsmanship. Feels like tech is going to function well. What is happening? This is this part that doesn't turn. So it's a circle that turns inside of a larger circle. The larger
That doesn't
circle is the
turn.
gateway that people are
Yeah.
walking through. The smaller circle is the actual projector for the lasers. That's obviously moving because these lasers are shooting around.
I think that's what's going on. But the most important part of this whole session, which was a pretty decent session, was that I was able to recognize that there was something there that I can read and that it was giving me something on display that said something about time. And I gave the number 22. It's the year, which is time, 22. When the subconscious is giving you the impression that you can read something, oftentimes it's going to offer up a mental image that will have clues as to the nature of the text that you can read. And so in this case, what I saw was a digital clock. I saw a digital clock. It had 4 numbers on it, and I couldn't make out the first 2 numbers, but the last 2 numbers were 22.
Wow.
And so instead of saying it's a digital clock, I said there's something on display that tells me something about time,
22.
and it's 22.
Dude, the crazy part about this session, I mean, it's so cool how your sessions are so diverse and they have different things that, are mind-blowing. This one is the different touch points. You had 4 different slides with different pieces of detail and they all line up perfectly. I mean, the more detail you're able to hit, the smaller the chances that it's just a chance. I mean, this is just absolutely, this is stunning. I didn't even know this one existed. Is this ranked really high? Why is this not a 7?
The AI, I fight against this sometimes. My very last session that I did on here, I just did it last night. The same sort of thing where I get many, many different aspects of the target. Like, my problem is that the holistic nature of the target is not always the most accurate in my sessions. But if you zoom in on individual elements of the picture, which is, I should probably just stop doing this when I check my feedback. That's what I do when I'm checking my feedback, is I will find something in the target image and I'm like, oh shit, that's definitely what I was looking at. But I'm zoomed in on it looking very, very closely, and the displacement effect might be telling me during my
You're
session,
looking at the
this is a
zoom in.
super important thing. But then you zoom out. So like, if you don't mind, let's look at the very last session I do, because this is a
Yeah,
good
let's do
lesson.
it. Dude,
For-
these
for
are, I want
other
to look at
viewers
all of
watching.
them. So the very last session when you did the one you did last night.
Yeah,
Okay, let's look at this. Do you want to go through these?
sure.
What does the target feel
So
like? Yeah, there's an area of bright red color that catches my eyes. Feels like a small area of dryness and safety, floating in a wide open area, isolated, dangerous but exciting. No room for error. Curved features beneath the shape of a life form, who looks like they're holding something off in their hand. Blues, whites all around. I get like a river rafting idea when let me.
floating is important.
Oh, it's this one. Photon had a crazy viewing on this too.
So the floating, I'm continually
Yeah.
talking about this
In
thing
a
floating.
wide
It's a
open
balloon,
area,
right?
isolated, dangerous, and exciting.
No room for
No
error.
room for
If
error.
you
It's a
look,
satellite, right?
if you look back at the original shot, I
Yeah.
said there was something red that catches my eye.
Mm.
Look at that thing again.
Oh
Right in the
my
center.
gosh.
There's an area of bright red light that catches my eye. There's whites and blues all around. The thing
Yeah.
floating is a light color also, I say.
Yeah.
There's a description of a guy, a life form, that
Yeah.
looks like they're standing over a curved feature and they're holding something in their hand. Go to the next slide real quick. So that was what I was seeing with the guy who
It's
was
a guy
holding something in
holding
his
something.
hand, and I thought it looked like a cane. And also here I said spacewalk also. I
Yeah.
wasn't
Like a
only talking
tether.
about, yeah,
Yeah.
but I was thinking about like a cane. For whatever reason, it felt like a cane.
Mm.
So if you look at this picture, and if you do get an opportunity to zoom in, right there next to those two lights, there's a collection of guys standing on the ground, and one of them has one crutch,
Mm.
and he's leaning on that one crutch,
Is it?
and it's pointing
I
at
gotta
those guys
zoom.
right there.
You know what I gotta tell Chase to do? Well, not tell him, but it suggests he does. Is on my site, I have like a magnification thing where as your cursor hovers over it, it zooms into that spot. Which for things like this, I wish I could see it, but I'll take your word for it and I'll look later. There's a guy with a cane down here. One of these.
There's a guy with a crutch. He's
Oh,
got a crutch
really?
and he's like leaning on the crutch and he's
Wow.
standing above a tube that is feeding air to this balloon. And I said he was
Wow.
standing over a curved feature holding something in his hand. So like this is another good example of each individual scan getting
Yeah.
some piece of it.
Hmm.
Um, the might as well just walk through this here. This
Yeah,
the next
you want to
slide.
go to the next ones? Yeah, 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 let's do this. Show me something I recognize when I look at the target. Feeling of urgency, perilous feeling. We need someone to know what they're doing, or someone might die. Wow.
I don't know. I don't know everything. Like it could be that that was on target. Could be it's off target. It, but and then there's the next one here also, which
Show me what the
is
text says. Vertical, transparent shape. You can see you can see into that contains information inside. Wow, and it's a satellite, which you know
so
how
this
satellites, you know.
so this is kind of my baseline when I make target contact. The
Mm,
Titanic and being able to read the number 22 and know it has something to do with time. All of those are very extreme outliers.
mm,
Almost always I can make target contact and I can wander around and describe individual aspects of a target image, but I don't always nail the holistic,
mm.
total understanding of what the target image is. And that's what I'm trying to develop now is becoming more consistent with being able to tell you, give a really good description of what it is that I'm seeing, not just what the individual elements of the picture look like and feel like.
How are
On
you
this
going
last
about
scan,
improving that?
well, one is reading the text. That's
Mm,
probably the most important thing I'm doing right now is trying to
mm,
read text on all of my targets.
mm,
So in this case, you can't, it's not transparent.
mm.
It is vertical, but it does kind of feel like you can see into it
Yeah,
because
it's
of the,
reflective. Yeah.
it's reflective. It's got this curvature. It looks like it's
Yeah.
distant on the inside of it,
Hmm.
contains information inside, and also just like the poetic message in a bottle idea, like this thing floating in the middle of nowhere that contains information. Like the subconscious feels like an artist sometimes in that it's difficult to work with, for one, and it's very creative in how it wants to wander around and play with words.
Mm,
And so, one thing I do in my sessions is I try and give it lots of space. I try and let my language flow like prose almost
mm.
to create a place where the subconscious can influence my language in the direction that it wants to go. And sometimes it works really, really well, and sometimes you kind of nibble around the edges, like with this one. That's why I wanted to give this example because it's not like a perfect hit, but you can see this is what most people are going to experience where they really understand there's something underneath here and I want to play around with this more. Is you're going to be nibbling around the edges of it, but even that's going to be difficult for you to write off as a total coincidence.
Yeah, but that's okay. Is That's exactly what I was thinking before you were saying that. Is even if you nibble around the edges of it, because you're hitting all of these different data points, it still builds a great, like, way beyond chance picture. Especially because
Yeah.
you're doing different scans and getting it from multiple, perspectives.
Yeah. Yep. That's the goal.
Dude, yeah, this is so cool. I've never even seen these sessions. There needs, you know what I should ask Chase to do as well. I actually don't think he has this. Let me check. I've got a thing on my site where users can star sessions. So beyond community score and beyond like AI judging, a user can star sessions they like, and then anyone else can see the sessions that they starred. What you just expressed right here is a perfect example of doing that. Because this one that you just showed me, for anyone looking to analyze or look at sessions, that would be so cool. That's such a good session to look at. It's got
He
an
has
AI score
that.
of 6. Oh, he does? He
He
has
has
that?
that now on your individual pages. You can go to your own
Oh,
profile
you
and
can't
see
see
your
other
own
people's
favorites.
those.
You might be able to.
So
There
I
might be a way that you can see other people's favorites. I just, if there is, I don't know. I
Yeah,
haven't seen it.
I don't see, he might do it a different way, but the way I have it is it's in one of these columns, and I see he doesn't have one of those. But I'll ask him about it, see if he wants to throw it up there. Do you have any other sessions off the top of your mind, or are those kind of, I feel like we hit some good ones.
There are some good ones on there. There are, I mean, if you want, yeah, there are some others. Let me see here. Let me go to my own favorites here. I'll try and give you one.
We need to do a part two. we
We
need to
can we can do a part
we
two.
need to do a
Well,
part two.
Well, we
There's
spent so
so
much
much good
time just
stuff
kind of
here.
musing over the potential of the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do a part two where we dedicate it to sessions and I can give you a
Yes.
list of them and we can go over them one by one.
Let's do that. I think that's
Okay.
a great idea. And I like both part and that was my idea when I started doing this. I want to get like a holistic conversation with when it comes to remote viewing in general and, talk about the future of it, where it's at now, all of those things we spoke about, but it's also so cool to like to I mean, I thought it would be really cool to, because it's one thing seeing sessions. When I go on to Social RV and I see someone like you or Photon or whoever, and I see these wild sessions, that's one thing, but I feel like there's a level of disattachment where you kind of don't understand intuitively. Holy shit, a human did that psychically. But
Yep.
when I talk to someone like you and the people watching this get to see, and hear the guy who actually did these sessions, I feel like that's a whole nother layer of holy shit.
Yep. And if you can do it around other people, that's something else I've worked with, is trying to, I'm lucky enough, I work on nights. And so all the bosses are gone. Nobody who gets paid a lot of money wants to be there at night. So we
Yeah.
kind of have free reign at the place.
Yeah.
And I have a friend of mine there who will write a word or a phrase, something recognizable on a piece of paper, and he'll put it in his pocket. And then I'll do a session and try and read the piece of paper on his pocket. And when it works really, really well. And it's one of those things where if you really want to show people that this is something you can do, make sure they know that you're going to need a few bites at the apple because we do produce misses
Of
sometimes.
course.
But a good hit, personally, seeing a person do it right in front of you, that's gonna be what changes people's minds.
Yeah, that's my go-to when I'm trying to explain this stuff to people that I know in real life. I'll just show them really cool sessions, but I always end it off with, "Let's try it. You should try it." And
Yeah. Yep.
they always are so confused. They're like, "Wait, what am I supposed to do?" And I'm trying to explain to them, "You're gonna have no information. Just try to envision the target that you're going to
Yep.
be shown in 2 or 3 minutes." And even if it's not great, I think people experiencing that almost unlocks a level of understanding about what it is.
Yeah. And there's there's this cultural wisdom that you shouldn't try the impossible. But first of all, in our culture, Western culture, we almost always get everything wrong on the first try. We have to remember that. We have a long, sordid history of getting things wrong on the first try. And so our first attempt at building a conceptual architecture for reality is that it's all physical. And because of that, we have a lot of misconceptions as to what is possible and what is not. There is a non-physical reality that people have been exploring for a really, really, really long time. And we're just now kind of catching up to that. and remote viewing offers the opportunity to experience that in a safe, controlled, repeatable, personal interaction. And I think we should be doing it.
Yeah, me too, right? I have the exact same mindset because if tell people to meditate and they can explore these things that way, people can only really come to it through their own experiences. But something like remote viewing, where you can operationalize it, is you can have some empirical evidence that people don't have to discover themselves, which kind of hits a whole different demographic and a whole different style of people who think differently. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I love about it. But the same, it's an ends to the same means. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, man, that's awesome. All right, dude. I think we kind of hit everything. This was so awesome. Like I think we went
Good.
over so many great things. We got to do a part two. I'll hit you up later. We'll
Yeah,
go
yeah,
through
yeah.
some of the great sessions. But yeah, dude.
I'll send you a bunch of links. I'll
Yeah,
send you a bunch of links to the sessions that I feel like we can cover, and we can just do a part two where we just go over all of them.